One concept students often struggle with is the idea of a least common denominator. Now, we need to know what a least common denominator, or LCD, is so that we can appropriately add or subtract fractions, because we need to know the least common denominator to be able to add or subtract fractions. Now, it's important for us to know what the denominator of a fraction is, and just as a reminder, the denominator of a fraction is nothing more than the bottom number in a fraction. Now, where the confusion often arises is in just not knowing what an LCD, or least common denominator, is. And I think what's going to make life simple for us is to recognize that it's nothing more than the least common multiple, otherwise known as the LCM, which we already know, of the denominators of a fraction. So if we can think of the least common denominator as nothing more than the least common multiple of the denominators of a fraction, then we can make use of a method that we've already explored, which is the cake method. The cake method we've used for finding LCM, and likewise we can find it for finding the LCM of the denominators, or in this case, the least common denominator of our fractions. So what I want to do is to quickly practice finding the least common denominator of these two fractions, 1 3/8 and 5 7/12. Now I've outlined for you the denominators. They are in blue. They are the bottom parts of the fraction. The whole number pieces, the 1 and the 5, are not relevant in this. And for that matter, for finding the least common denominator, the numerators, the 3 and the 7, are also not relevant. So let's quickly review how to use the cake method then to find the LCM, the least common multiple of 8 and 12. Remember, we start by putting 8 and 12 next to each other, and we essentially put them in an upside down division house. And now we look to find any number that we can factor out from 8 and 12. At the very least, we can see that 2 goes in. Some of you might recognize a larger number, but I'm just going to stick with the basics. These two numbers, 8 and 12, are even, so I know that 2 is a factor that both numbers will be divisible by. So now 8 divided by 2 is 4, 12 divided by 2 is 6. And I'll just repeat the process as long as I can. I can see these two numbers are still even, so I know that I can factor out one more time, at least another 2. And I'll repeat this process. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And when we get to this next row, you notice that there are no other common factors that 2 and 3 share other than the obvious factor of 1. What we do from here is we draw a big L around those outside numbers, and remember, we multiply all those numbers together. So my LCM is going to be made up of 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. That's this 2 times the 2 times the 2 times the 3. And by the time I multiply all those together, I get 24. So what that tells me is that the LCD, since the LCM of my denominators is 24, then my LCD is also equal to 24. So that is a quick refresher on least common denominators. From here, what we need to do is to be able to take that information and convert these two numbers to fractions that share that denominator. So what I like to do is to start by rewriting my numbers, 1 3/8 and 5 7/12. And I like to just stack them on top of each other. And the reason for that is that if I was getting ready to add or subtract these fractions, I'd want them stacked vertically. And now I'm simply going to rewrite my fractions, but I'm going to rewrite them with my new denominator. So I know the common denominator is 24 in both cases. So I'm going to rewrite 1 3/8 as 1 and some number of 24ths, and my 5 7/12 as 5 and some number of 24ths. Now, if this is beginning to look familiar to you, That's a good sign. If not, then I will walk you through from here. From at this point, we just need to know what we would multiply this denominator of 8 by to get us to 24. And we should know that 8 times 3 is 24. So we're going to take that same number and multiply our numerator by it. So if 8 times 3 is 24, then 3 times 3 is going to give us 9. So 1 and 3/8 converts to 1 and 9/24. I'm going to do the same thing down here. I know my 5 and 7/12 needs to be converted to 5 and some unknown number of 24ths. So I first need to find out 12 times what is 24, and that's 12 times 2. So my numerator, the 7, is going to get multiplied by that 2 as well, and that's going to give me 14. So 5 and 7/12, when converted to a denominator of 24ths, becomes 5 and 14/24. So that is all that we are doing here. We're finding, to find the least common denominator, we're basically finding the LCM of the denominators. We're finding the LCM of the denominators. We're using the cake method to help us do so. And then we're using that common denominator to help convert fractions that do not have a common denominator to fractions that do. And this is what will be really important because I need to have these common denominators to be able to add or subtract from here. So that is what the purpose of this exercise was. So once again, I saw some of you having some difficulty with this concept. I wanted to make sure that we went over it, and I would like you to follow through on doing the exercise that I posted to go along with this video.